Your cognitive collapse isn't weakness. It's just bad cellular banking architecture. We feel fatigued when our cells can no longer handle rapid demand, unable to stabilize energy delivery under pressure. Imagine your mitochondria not as power plants, but as complex hydraulic reservoirs designed to buffer against sudden drops or spikes in need. When this internal buffering fails, when the delicate dance of redox balance falters, you crash into what feels like a total loss of focus despite having slept 8 hours. This is the biological signature of unstable energy architecture, and it happens at the level we call ATP buffering profiles modulating action. That unstable architecture isn't just about raw power. It's about control. Imagine the inner workings of your cells as a sophisticated chemical factory where electrons are constantly moving through an assembly line. If that line becomes unbalanced, if there's too much sludge or not enough catalyst, the whole system stalls, regardless of how many parts you put in. This shift into perfect operational flow is what researchers call metabolic flexibility and the regulation of cellular redox state. When your mitochondria can dynamically adjust this balance, it supports deep mental coherence. It's less about brute force endurance and more about achieving a profound internal equilibrium. When we talk about stability and equilibrium, most people think it's just a steady supply line. But deep focus demands more than constant input. It requires perfect maintenance. It's like having the best factory equipment but letting the old machines accumulate sludge until they seize up, even if you pump them full of power. This is cellular sovereignty at work. Your cells fighting to stay pristine. They perform rigorous internal cleanup, a process called mitophagy and dynamic mitochondrial reorganization. These quality control systems prevent chronic energetic failure before it even starts. If this cellular upkeep slips, that subtle equilibrium we found earlier dissolves completely, leading not just to fatigue, but systemic vulnerability. This means something nobody expected for the kind of resilience you pursue in intense mental states. But how do you signal those internal mechanisms when your system is already screaming for a fix? The signal isn't an external command. It's a shift inside, a chemical conversation happening between molecules deep within every cell. Think of your cellular energy pathway like a finely tuned river system. The flow, the velocity, and even the pH determines if life thrives or collapses into stagnation. That critical balance is managed by metabolites like NAD+ versus NADH. When this ratio flips toward optimal efficiency, we move beyond mere stability. We touch something deeper, a state of what researchers call the resonance of being. It's cellular harmony translating directly to sustained mental flow. Some bioenergetic theorists argue that sheer external discipline overrides these subtle chemical requirements entirely, but the evidence suggests otherwise. You need this internal tuning for true cognitive transcendence. And if metabolic alignment is the key to deep focus, what happens when we try to deliberately manipulate those core energetic drivers? The true magic happens when the system stops reacting and starts leading itself. That internal conversation between molecules, that perfect flow of energy we talked about, is a dynamic feedback loop. It's not just stable. It can be tuned by subtle neurological commands. Think of your cellular state like adjusting the frequency on an incredibly sensitive radio dial. A millimeter shift in internal balance changes everything you receive. Certain bioenergetic pathways allow us to nudge that core metabolic harmony toward peak performance, a biological act we call pranodynamics, the living energy flow inside every cell. This ability transforms deep focus from something fleeting into a sustainable condition of being. But here is the unexpected catch. Optimizing this internal engine doesn't guarantee results. The cellular machinery fires perfectly, but what determines whether that pristine power translates into sustained cognitive clarity or just more frantic activity? The real determinant isn't just having that perfectly tuned engine. It's whether that engine creates internal stillness. Consider your body not as a perpetual motion machine, but like an incredibly sensitive instrument, a violin string under tension. Optimal bioenergetics gives you volume and sustain, yes, but the true resonance comes from absolute quietude within the frame of reference. When metabolic flux is managed with this profound level of cellular governance, it doesn't just provide energy, it dampens systemic internal noise. The shift we observe moves beyond mere function into a state where your core biological systems begin to feel fundamentally unshakable, a deep sense of inner command that isn't merely feeling good, but being structurally sound. But if this perfect cellular equilibrium is so deeply intertwined with our subjective experience, what happens when the system achieves its ultimate state of self-governance? The convergence point we've uncovered is not about optimizing a machine. It's about inhabiting an internal rhythm. When that profound level of bioenergetic coherence takes hold, the cell doesn't just perform well, it dictates its own optimal state. That cellular sovereignty becomes synonymous with personal autonomy. The takeaway is this: true cognitive resilience comes not from pushing harder against fatigue, but by actively seeking the deep stillness where your system defaults to its most efficient metabolic architecture. Learn how small shifts in rhythmic presence can guide those internal chemical conversations toward peak flow and sustainable clarity. This isn't a trick. It's physics at the scale of life itself. The full research archive is at jmthomasofficial.com. You are done chasing peak performance metrics that fail you because they misunderstand architecture. The secret isn't the input. It's the internal tuning dial itself. Instead of viewing focus as a battle against distraction, see it as finding an absolute quiet where your deepest cellular mechanisms can finally take charge. When we stop trying to manually fuel the engine and start allowing the system its natural rhythm, that gentle cadence of stillness, you aren't resting. You are aligning with biological coherence. Think of it like dropping anchor in a storm. All external chaos remains, but inside the vessel, there is perfect, unshakable quietude. That deep internal settling is how we access sustained clarity at the cellular level. The full research archive is at jmthomasofficial.com.